Hi there, my name is Memo, this is my channel Houseplanty Goodness, and essentially it's a place where I like to geek out about my big passion. You might be able to see some of it behind me. Hopefully this is one of your big passions if you've stumbled across this video, and obviously I'm talking about tropical houseplants. Now, today's topic that I want to talk about is Anthurium, and specifically the one that I've got right here in front of me. And it is a relatively small specimen, but this was actually a plug plant that I got last summer from a local plant business, a great local plant business. If you're in the UK or in and around the Norfolk or Suffolk area, Turnip Tropical is amazing. I think they do delivery, if I'm not mistaken, nationwide to the UK. But this was a great little plug plant that I got last year. It was tiny. You might be able to see if I bring it in a bit closer, one of the crispy leaves there. That was possibly one of the first few leaves that this plant came with. And as you can see, it is growing very happily. It is ruffling, and you might be able to see on the newest leaf all of the ruffles, or abs as people call them. I'm not going to handle this too much, and that's a top tip as well. If you've got anthuriums and the leaf hasn't fully hardened yet, try to touch it as little as possible, or not at all, basically, because Anthurium leaves, when they're that fragile in the earlier stage when the leaf is maturing, they will mark up, they will tear really easily, and they are also potentially going to get things that diseases or any kind of bacterial infections that you might just have on your hands. So try not to handle new leaves as much as possible. With some of these anthuriums that have got kind of leathery leaves and they're not velvety, it should be okay as long as your hands are clean to touch it after it's hardened, but just try to keep the touchy down to a minimum if possible. Now, you might be able to see as well that I have got the usual sphagnum moss kind of scarf around the stem, and that's to help promote more growth and larger leaves, and it is working like a charm. As you can see, the newest leaf is huge and it's getting even larger. These plants will get really long leaves, and kind of to the level and larger than the philodendron that you can see behind me, the Philodendron meruldense, and this is one of its newest leaves, and this is also hardening off at the moment. It's very soft, so that will probably get even longer still. And these and that plant will also get much larger leaves. Some of these leaves are probably taller than me, and I'm about 1.77 meters. So that gives you an indication of how large these plants can get. But also note how small the net pot that I have it in is. The other thing as well to note with this, as with most of my anthuriums, I'm growing it in my light, airy, aroid soil mix. And if you want a video on how I create mine, obviously there's different versions, and as always I encourage everybody to experiment and see what works in your care. But I have got a video of how I make mine on my channel, so please do go and check it out if you want to know a bit more. A lot of those ingredients you can also find in the link that I've got down in the description as well. Now, in terms of the sphagnum moss, if I just move it out ever so slightly, so you might be able to see if I bring it in closer to the camera, and hopefully it will focus, you might be able to see there's quite a bit of sphagnum moss, but that right there is a root, and hopefully you are seeing that clearly. Probably not. Let me see if I can move some of the sphagnum moss off of that root. So you might be able to see there, very nice white fuzzy root. And essentially the way that moss gets watered is it keeps a bit of its humidity, but every time I water the plant, I'll water the moss as well, and that will give those aerial roots something to kind of hold on to. As far as I understand, I haven't really propagated any anthuriums at the moment, but if you wanted to chop an anthurium up at the node and you've got something like that, it's more than likely that you'll have a couple of aerial roots that is basically rooting into the sphagnum moss, which means that it will give it a bit of a legs up when you're trying to propagate it. So you're not just going from a chunk, you can leave a leaf on, and you can leave some of that aerial root, and it will be much quicker to root out, because I am rooting out a chunk at the moment, which is, for those that don't know, is just a piece of stem with a node from an anthurium without any leaves. It's taking forever. But, and I have zero patience generally, as most people that know me will probably know. But this will probably be a bit slightly faster way of doing it. And in terms of care, I've got this in the kind of the darkest part of my conservatory, so it's getting kind of medium light. And you can see the leaves are coming in a nice darker color. Some of the older leaves that were in the old property was getting a bit more light, so they are more washed out. And generally with anthuriums, if you kind of train them, as with most houseplants, if you train them, they can take higher light. Most of them, not all of them. But what you will get is lighter colored leaves, if not burning. If you're burning it, then it means you've kind of transitioned too quickly and you haven't done it slowly enough. But you'll get much brighter leaves, and sometimes that's not what you want. You want slightly darker leaves, like this anthurium. I wanted it to have slightly darker, more traditionally anthurium type leaves. So I've got it in a slightly darker location, and it is loving life essentially. In terms of watering, because it's so small in its pot, it helps me control the moisture level in the soil, and most people that will have an anthurium will know that they like to remain evenly moist. It's always a nice kind of expression when it comes to plants, because what the hell does evenly moist mean, and how does it work in a household environment? You can understand how it would work in a rainforest, but in a household environment it's quite difficult to kind of maintain that. So essentially what it means is get a moisture meter. It will be your friend with anthuriums. Make sure that it's just getting between moist and dry before you water it. Don't let it go dry. Like some of the philodendrons, they can go a bit dry for a couple of days before you need to water them. Anthuriums really don't like that, so bear that in mind. But yeah, essentially, that's what you need to do for the watering, is just keep it evenly moist and make sure it's getting plenty of aeration, that it's not in really kind of dense soil. So the way that I like to describe this to people is very similar to Phalaenopsis orchids, where you'll just get them in bark. Anthuriums, possibly in their natural environment, might grow like that, especially ones with thicker roots, but it's one step up. It's not on the other side of the spectrum where it just needs straight up soil. It's one step up from an orchid. If you imagine that, that's how much air it needs on its roots, but it also needs a bit more moisture and humidity around the root structure to keep it happy. Although having said that, this is one of my least fussy anthuriums. So if you are thinking about getting into the slightly rarer or more uncommon anthuriums and you don't know where to start, Anthurium Veitchii, see if you can get a relatively cheap rooted cutting or a small plant or even a plug plant, as long as you've got a bit of patience, because it will take about a year to get it to this level. It's great. It's a great plant. Essentially, it's a nice and easy one to learn on if the only experience you've had is a Clarinarium. And little side note, everybody's like, the Clarinarium is so easy. I have never been able to keep one happy. I've been able to keep some of these rarer ones happy, but that one, maybe it's because I'll treat that anthurium, the Anthurium Clarinarium, like other anthuriums, where I keep it evenly moist and airy, whilst I think because it's got chunkier roots, and that's probably another reason why it's a bit more of a common anthurium these days, is it can take a bit of neglect and a bit of drying out more so than other anthuriums can, and probably even prefers it a bit, which means that people that are just starting off can kind of do that, and they can transition from the more neglectful watering or the kind of letting it dry out for a long period of time that they might do with other plants with that anthurium without it kind of perishing. But yeah, I think that's all I wanted to say about the Anthurium Veitchii. I will show you the other plant that I had got, which was a mature specimen, but it came to me entirely with root rot, so I had to start from scratch. That one's actually lagging behind this one, and it was a much larger plant to begin with. Let me show you. This is the other Veitchii that I had, as I said. This one went through root rot. It's kind of bouncing back, and it's been bouncing back for a while. You might be able to see if I bring it in a bit closer and it stops focusing on my face. Right there, you might be able to see a little bit of a new growth. Essentially, with this plant, just grab one if you can. Try it out. Anthurium Veitchii, a great anthurium to start on the rarer anthuriums. God knows how many times I just said anthurium within this video. Apologies, it was probably too many, but yeah. Anyway. Hopefully you've enjoyed. Hopefully I shall see you here soon. If you've got any questions and comments, as always, do drop them in the comments down below. I'd love to have that conversation with you. And yeah, hope you have a great rest of the day. Thanks. Bye.